that's the rooster.
Yes, I heard a rooster. I heard a rooster.
Where is the rooster?
I think it's one of my neighbors.
The meeting is live.
Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, September 10th, 2020, 6:33 p.m. We're here for the Williamsport City Council meeting. We're meeting remotely again. We'll move to item one. First, I have two announcements, actually. Friday, August 28th, we had a transit training session that 6 members of council attended. It was essentially an executive session. And at the close of regular business tonight, we will have an executive session to discuss a personnel issue. Let's move to item 1 on the agenda, approval of city council minutes dated August 27th, 2020. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions or corrections from council tonight? Hearing, seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion tonight, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 2, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests tonight. I'm going to move items 10 through 14 up. There's a lot consolidation and 4 certificates of appropriateness. So we'll move to item 10, lot consolidation, land development for parking lot. Mr. Nar?
Good evening, President Allison and members of council. What I present to you is a lot consolidation request from Eck Family 2, as well as a land development. They will be combining parcels 72002, 332, 307, and 308, which is located on Park Avenue. The consolidation will consolidate all 3 of those parcels into one for the purpose of the land development plan, which is actually to create a parking lot for the proposed use at that facility. It was reviewed by both Lycoming County Planning as well as the City Planning Commission. You do have county's comments. It was also reviewed by our city engineer and myself. It does meet zoning requirements as well as stormwater management. And we both recommended approval or had no issue with the land development. The comments from the county, they addressed in reference to the distance for the trees. We did do a site visit as well as we did speak with the engineer, and they do have adequate spacing for the growth of trees in those parking lot requirements. So it does meet that requirement. In addition, normally what will happen is when the building permit comes through for the parking lot, obviously I will oversee every step of the process to make sure that it meets all building and zoning codes. Again, it was reviewed by both county and planning and both positive recommendation. And I do have a representative if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nar. Council, are there any questions, comments tonight?
Sure, Randy, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, go ahead. Beth.
So just to clarify, Mr. Nar, you're saying that even though the county said there was an adequate space for trees in their landscaping plan, there is?
The county didn't, because he doesn't have the specified distance, but we did do a site visit. It does meet the requirement based off of where their projections are. And again, it was made and reviewed by the engineer and myself. I did a site visit, and they will have adequate spacing for the trees to meet the requirement for when it comes to the actual construction of the parking lot. And again, that'll be something that I will oversee through that process to make sure that it does adhere to our landscape ordinance as well as our stormwater ordinance as well.
Okay, excellent. And what is the proposed use here?
It'll be medical office.
Medical office space, okay. Thank you, Mr. Nar. Okay, that's everything. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Councilwoman Neal. Mrs. Katz. You're muted, Bonnie.
You know, that's the saying for 2020. You're
I know.
muted. Seriously. I see, Gary, where they're going to have 31 stalls and 2 handicap stalls. Is that enough for 2 handicap stalls?
Basically, Bonnie, what happens is they provided me with a blueprint of the lot of the building layout based off of what they're using the office space for. It does meet, it actually exceeds the requirement for both parking areas.
It's one for every 25 stalls you're required. If you have 40, whatever it is, Gary, 35 stalls, what's he have?
Yep, he has, I think it's
31.
31
31, then.
stalls.
31.
Two's adequate. Two's adequate for that many stalls.
It's two's adequate for the handicap, but again, I do have blueprints of the site within the facility as far as floor plans, based off of the square footage and the zoning ordinance requirement for parking. He does meet that and actually exceeds it by a couple parking spaces.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary and Joe.
Yep.
Any other questions from council? Mr. Nar, there's going to be some demolition going on first. Is there any?
The building's actually down. It is just a vacant lot. They're just
Oh,
going
it
to
is? Okay.
consolidate those 2 parcels. Yes, that building's been down for several years.
Yeah, Gary,
Oh,
Gary, there is a, if this is the parking lot for Mr. Ecknet office complex, there is a building next to it that will be coming down. So basically by doing this, you're agreeing to tear that building down.
You talk about that small space in the 1 parcel, Joe?
That house, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's all going to come down for a parking lot.
Okay, I thought there was a house there.
Yep, there is.
And do they have well, I guess they'll come to us first, though.
Well, basically, when you're approving this particular land development, you're approving the demolition of that structure.
Okay,
They don't need a separate permit, Joe?
They need a permit to tear the building down, but this is all part of the land development drawing. When you're tearing a building down, you're agreeing to tear the building down so he can construct a parking lot the size that he submitted to Gary and me.
And what that is, Liz, is because obviously you can't build over an existing structure. So they would be required to tear it down for the parking, for the CCU.
I guess I'm just asking about the process here, because it seems as though generally speaking, we require a demolition permit. We see the permit, we see the structure, et cetera, et cetera.
And
Then
you
we
do,
do.
and you're absolutely correct, but if there's a demolition part of a land development, it all goes as one. That's how typically we've done it. If
Okay,
it's
but
separate,
we just don't have a demolition permit, do we?
not at this time, but when he goes to go ahead and start the parking lot, he'll file for that demo permit. And then I'm just going to issue that demolition permit because you're agreeing at this point with this land development that the only way he can do the parking lot is for him to tear the building down.
But to the best, we've never done that before in my experience, Joe.
Liz, I believe we've done it in 2 or 3 other incidents.
Yes, yeah, we have, Ms. Mealy.
Okay. What other instances? Sorry, I'm trying to remember.
I'd have to think, to be very honest. I know we have. I know where U-Haul is, that building. Partial
Okay.
demolition on that we did for them. I mean, I'm more than happy to, if you wanted me to bring it in front of you, I can. I have no issues with that.
It
But
doesn't, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me in this particular instance, Mr. Girardi. It's just I guess, a question of process. And if at some point we were looking at a larger scale demolition than what we're talking about here, what would be the process there? And it seems to me that we should see the permit simultaneous with the land development. I mean, the permit's really kind of a tiny thing compared to the rest of it. It would take somebody 5 minutes to fill out paperwork.
I'm saying, well, Dave Smith here, he's our attorney. And I mean, if he thinks it needs to go through, I have no issues with that. I'm just saying you can't do one without the other.
Right. No, that's obviously the case, Joe. Obviously, they're not about to build a parking lot on a space that currently holds a house.
Right.
But just, yeah. I don't know, Dave, what's the dominant thinking? I mean, I understand the whole idea. I guess it simply seems like there should be a disclosure element as part of the process if we're permitting a demolition sort of by, as an understood part of the process.
I'm honestly okay with it either way. And so as long as the demolition process comes in front of you at some point in time, and obviously the applicant knows that that's part of the process, I'm okay with that.
Okay, it sounds as though the demolition permit won't come in front of us.
Oh,
That's kind of what I was asking.
And maybe I missed that. Why is that?
Well, here's what happens, Dave. He's submitted a land development drawing, okay? In order for him to do the land development drawing that was approved by the county and approved by, it would be approved tonight by city council, he has to tear the building down. So I'm saying, yes, I could submit the paperwork, but then you can't really approve this land development unless you're approving the demolition of the house. Understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, okay.
So if you're approving land development, you're approving the demolition of the structure.
I get that, and that makes sense to me. Now that I understand that the demolition is actually part of what you're approving, unless there are elements of the land development process, including the tearing down of the building, that council needs to see the demolition applicant, demolition application approved. I don't know that it's necessary as a separate item under these circumstances.
Okay, yeah, I think in future, I might be a little more comfortable with the whole idea if we had, say, pictures of the existing site layout if it involved demolition or something like that, just so that everyone was on the same page and knew exactly what was coming down. As I said, in this instance, I'm not inclined to hold it back. I'm just trying to prevent something in the future where we approve a land development not being aware of what's sitting on the site currently, and then, you know, when the building comes down, everybody's lit. And hopefully we wouldn't be that stupid, Joe, I know.
And Liz, what I can do in the future is when I present these land development plans, I will basically state in there that we're requesting a demo so that we can do as part of the land development plan. That way, you know, up front versus, and I can say that during my presentation.
But I think that'd be awesome, Gary. That's really all we're after. It's just kind of a complete understanding. So
And understand.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Nart. It's a good solution to Mrs. Katz. Yes.
Yes, who is the representative that's here tonight, Gary?
Basello Engineering, who actually did the drawings.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I just have one here, President Allison. I was just looking at the listed address on the plan set. It has 307 and 308 Park Ave, but I was just bringing it up, and that's not the addresses. So I'm wondering.
Probably 307, 309, or 308,
It's
310. You're right.
the address is 307 and 308 Park Ave.
Right, but I'm looking it up right now, and that's not where that's located. It would be 438 and 428 Park Ave.
I'm sorry, the 307 and 308 is the parcels.
Great.
Okay.
That's all that is. That was my mistake. It was 332 is one parcel, and then 307 and 308 are the three parcels.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, Mr. Banks. I didn't see you. I didn't mean to skip over you. Any other questions or corrections tonight? Okay, now we will have a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
And we've already had our discussion. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder, Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 11, Certificate of Appropriateness for 320 East 3rd Street. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, good evening, President Allison, members of council. The first one we have is a certificate appropriateness request to erect 2 wall-mounted business identification signs. I have attached photos for the size, location, style, and color. The first picture you come to is the picture of the building. It used to be, I believe, the former American Rescue Workers, not American Rescue, it was Red Cross, I'm sorry. And there's 2 spots I had boxed out for the front above those double windows, and the other sign will be on the side. And if you have any questions of me, more than happy to answer them. I believe we do have a member, someone from the sign company, talk also about it.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Questions or comments tonight from council?
Mr. Allison, can I just ask a quick question about the nature of the business and
Yes, absolutely.
well, as we often do, and I'm not quite certain if this is a business or more of a nonprofit. Can you give me any guidance on that, Mr. Girardi?
If Mr. Norris here, he probably could help me out on this, but yes, it's a business that is the veterinarian that takes care of animals. There's no like overnight stay unless it's like an emergency, the dog has to stay, but it's not like a care where someone can drop off an animal and stay for a long period of time.
It is strictly a veterinarian office without the ability to have kennels and overnight stays, and it is a permitted use in that zoning district.
Got it. And the cat cafe I see on the other, is it also a cat cafe?
It's part of that, correct? Yes.
Okay, I can think of some small children who are going to be very excited. Well, I guess small kids aren't allowed, but that'll be an exciting addition to our to the district. Do you know how the whole project works? It's basically a veterinary clinic, but then there's a cat cafe that you can. Is it a paid entry or is it more of a adoption sort of geared?
I believe Carrie is online and she can better answer that.
Right.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
Yep.
Carrie?
You're muted, Carrie.
Oh, there. Okay, now can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Yeah, it is paid admission, but it is also adoptions. It's cats from the SPCA that are there for adoption. So people can visit if they're not looking for cats, or if they're looking to adopt one, they can stop in as well.
Oh, fantastic. All right.
And we are a nonprofit too. And we only
Oh, I'm
deal with
sorry.
cats.
Did not know
Well,
that.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit, but we are a spay neuter clinic for cats.
Thank you. Are there any other questions tonight from council?
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
can I ask Carrie this question? When you say low-cost spay and neuter, this is for somebody to bring in their cats that they own, right? Not somebody that has found cats on the street.
Correct. Well, I mean, there are people that trap ferals. We work with the SPCA and other organizations that do that. But I mean, we will spay and neuter anybody's cat, but they can't just bring them in and dump them there.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, no. They're taking responsibility for them, getting them spayed and neutered and returning them to where they come from, where they come.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that for the public, that they know that
Yeah.
they just can't drop their cats
Oh,
off.
no. And we've actually been around for six and a half years now. We're down in Loyalsock Township. So people are pretty aware of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions from council tonight? You're all spread out on my screen, so it'll take me a minute to make sure. And before we go any farther, while it's still fresh in my memory, Mr. Smith is here tonight, but he's not our solicitor. He's going to be here for the executive session. But Mr. Lubin's our solicitor tonight, and he's with Mr. Cooley. Just so we have that legal section straightened out. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and we had our discussion. So Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Ben,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We move to item 12, certificate of appropriateness, 468 William Street. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, what you have before you is a certificate of appropriateness request to paint the existing building. The color schemes as follows. The main body of the building is a tan kind of beige. The windows and door trims are white and the miscellaneous trims are gray. I have attached a photo of the building. If you can see, the first picture is when I first saw the building being painted. And so I went and took a picture of it. I allowed them to continue because I didn't think we wanted to let a building sit like that for 2.5 weeks. So they continued. And that's what the building looks like today. Is the next picture back. Those are earth tone colors, meets the design standards. So, and this was brought before the Planning Commission and recommended for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Questions tonight from council? I hear or see none. So we'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? I guess not. So Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes. Yes.
Cat,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 13, certificate of appropriateness for 210 Basin Street. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, this building was recently purchased. We have a new owner. The owner has changed the name of the building to River Valley Plaza. It used to be the Basin Street Plaza. He did erect a sign like that went up. It doesn't take too long to put a sign like that up, especially if you're replacing it with another. I talked to the owner, so he's requesting this to be allowed to be erected. It's 48 inches tall. It's approximately 22 feet long. And it's a permitted type of sign. It doesn't exceed any zoning requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Girardi. Council.
Randy, if I might.
Yes, go ahead. Liz.
Thank you. Mr. Girardi, just to go back over this again, I guess, for the sake of whoever in the public might be watching, there's a double fee for a certificate of appropriateness application, correct? If
Correct. What happens is at this point, he has to apply for a permit for this. The fee will be doubled. Also, city council at any time does have the right, even though he erected a sign, you have the right to change the color, the size, whatever you like to do if it doesn't meet the design standards. Okay. It was an error on his part. We also, so you know, Ms. Mealy, we send out all those letters in the central business district concerning this such problem, and we get them still all the time. It just happens. I think we had a new owner on this one. But yes, you're correct. There'll be a double fee. And again, if there's something you don't like about it, you wish to correct because it doesn't meet the standards, you're more than, like I said, it's your right to do that.
Got it.
Ms. Mealy, what we've been doing within the central business district is once a year, as Joe said, I have draft a letter of all tax parcels within the central business district once a year, and we send them a letter out explaining to them they need to come in and see us. Now, this individual had obviously taken ownership within the last 4 or 5 months and obviously did not get the letter.
Got it. Yeah, that's just fine. And so the parcel has changed hands. That'll be an interesting change to the facility. Have we had any new tenants in the facility since the parcel changed hands?
Actually, I think the facility's pretty much filled up, if I'm right, Gary. Am I correct?
That is correct. I don't think we have any open space there. The owner is Rick Mahonsky.
Right.
Okay, that was going to be one of my questions, but all right, fantastic. Well, excellent. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? I see nobody, so Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
So move.
I mean, we need did we get a motion? No, we need a
Yeah,
motion.
you have a motion and a second, Randy.
We need a motion in a second. please.
I moved.
I seconded.
We'll have the vote, please, Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Cat,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 14, and the final certificate is for 25 West 3rd Street. Mr. Girardi.
Yeah, this is the last certificate of appropriateness request. It's to erect one business identification sign. I have attached photos for the size, location, style, and colors for additional information. If you look at the picture of the building, on the corner where you see that do not enter sign, there's 2 signs there presently. This sign will be mounted directly above it. It is the same exact size as those signs that are there now. I just didn't, there's an individual who's here who gave me a copy of that. I just didn't get an opportunity to give it to you. So, and if you have any questions of me or the representative, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Girardi. Questions? Okay, I see or hear none. So we'll entertain a motion.
So move.
In a second.
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 Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. There's no discussion. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. And that takes care of the end of the agenda. We'll move back.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you all. Thank everyone who came tonight. We will move back to item 3. Item 3, an ordinance amending Part 1 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Williamsport. It passed on our second vote, but it's been vetoed by the mayor. So we would need to vote to override that veto tonight. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the table to vote to override the mayor's veto. Is there any further discussion from council tonight?
Randy, if I could ask a question or two, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just so I have a sense, I feel as though we have over the last couple of weeks been doing a little bit of maybe not quite catching up with one another to discuss things adequately prior to votes. And that falls on both the administration and on council. But I understand the logic behind the mayor's veto. I understand the logic behind council's vote. It seems to me that there needs to be further discussion between the administration and city council and a better understanding of what we're doing moving forward. And I'm wondering what the best procedure is to enable that discussion. Mr. Yoder, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I mean, in my mind, this simply updates everything as it's currently in line. And again, more importantly, as we've all talked about, and I think before my time was even talked about, this is really closing a loophole that is in the administrative code that does not allow for proper checks and balances of city government. And so it's fresh on our minds. I think that it needs to be addressed. You know, I personally think that this addresses that. We're going to review this every year as a part of the capital budget, which I think was a great idea by you, Liz. So thank you for that. You know, this is the beginning of, I think, that process. And I think this is an ongoing process that we need to do and will do as a part of an updated administrative code. So, I mean, and frankly, it's something of importance that needs to be done, in my opinion, in some kind of a public forum that can be accessed by the constituents in the city. I mean, this is something that directly impacts them day to day. So I personally think that this addresses that, and it lays out a framework of how we do that.
Okay, I 100% agree. I'm simply trying to think if we feel that there's a need for further discussion, if there's a way that we could do that without either overriding the veto or failing to override the veto. That is to say, if there's a tabling procedure or anything like that that we could take to enable the discussion that the administration seems to feel is necessary.
Liz, how much more discussion do we have to do? We've gone through 2 readings with this. We've explored every aspect of this. And if we look back on past administrations, we have all complained about the way things were being run and not clarified. When the government study was being done, both the Home Rule and the other group for council, they all asked for this. They wanted to see where this was, and we didn't have it in place. Now, Adam has worked on this. He's put it in place, and it clarifies so much. But as far as how much more discussion do we have to have? We've had 5 weeks to go through this. We've had 2 readings. Adam sent an email explaining exactly the financial end of this. So I don't see where we would need to do anything further than vote yes.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, I think a good chunk of the impetus for this revision in the beginning, Bonnie, and I 100% understand the need for it. I'm simply trying to get us all on the same page before we wind up, you know,
We all don't,
at the same
Liz,
page.
we don't all have to be on the same page. I mean, just because there's 7 of us doesn't mean there has to be a yes to everything for all 7 of us. You know,
Yeah, I know that.
You know, so therefore, you know, if there's objections from a couple of people, fine. But I'm giving my statement here as far as I think this has been needed. When you look back at even the past administration, how much we all complained about what was not done correctly and how things were not processed correctly. I mean, that was one of the things that we complained about all the time. When you look at what was done with the previous mayor, I mean, he's the one who put in place, as far as him saying he was public safety director. He fired Bill Nichols in the middle of a council meeting and made him and director of finance. And we all sat there and said, how could you possibly do this? This gives a definition of how things should be done, and how we can also put a stop to nonsense.
If I could address a couple of those issues. I don't think I've heard anybody disagree that we need this. I think we all agree that we need this. But what we need something that we know is going to work. And I think to that point, I would agree with Councilwoman Mealy that yes, we have a structure. We didn't have a structure before. Now we have a structure, but I don't think the conversation is over about the details of that structure. I've tried to be clear from my point of view on that. Yes, we've talked about this for a while, but the reason I say that is because this administration is still in a fluid place. Everything hasn't been decided. Everything hasn't been, and most of that, a good portion of that, I attribute to the COVID crisis that changed the playing field drastically and kind of put everything back. You know, that we couldn't go through all the regular procedures, requests for resumes and everything that was needed. For instance, there's a director of administration and finance position here. Well, the wording says that shall be filled. And to find somebody who can do both of those, fill those both of those positions adequately in one person, I think it's a difficult task given the budget that we have to work with. So that's a question in my mind. It's not that we can't still work on it. I don't think we can wait a year to revisit it and see if it needs change, because I think the administration is still developing and may have some things that don't particularly line up with this structure. And we can always go back in and amend and change, because I really believe it's still, and this is no assigning anything negative to the work that Adam Yoder did on this. I mean, it was a very complex effort. And as we were talking a little bit before the meeting, it's not necessarily all riveting reading and exciting things. It's digging down into the weeds, and I think he did do a great job of that. But although council has the legislative and by ordinance authority to regulate this, I really think it works best when this kind of thing works best when there's collaboration between council, between the executive and legislative branches. We didn't have that opportunity at all over the past several years that all of us have been on council. There was no opportunity to develop for a number of reasons, which are frankly very evident, I think, to all of us and probably a lot of people. There just was not that kind of relationship, but I feel we have that now. So I always think it's better to collaborate and make sure that we have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. I know we've spent some weeks on it, but there are things that I don't know yet as far as having a chance to talk to the administration about certain things that they see or maybe still in the process of figuring out, because again, it hasn't been, they've had their plates full due to a number of things that we all know about. So I don't think we're talking about changing the intent of this effort at all. I just believe, and I really do believe, we are all on the same page. I think we all want that. We all want to make sure we put out the best product there is out of this process. So those are just that's just where I'm coming from on it.
Randy, I would like to address some of the things that you just said. Number one, I don't take COVID as an excuse, because we've all been on the phones with one another as far as trying to get things accomplished. And sometimes it's been easier doing that and without being together at times. We've also, had several meetings on this. I do know that Adam approached the mayor back in the end of January, beginning of February with this. So it's not something that was thrown at the administration just blindly in the last 5 weeks. This is something that has been, tried to be discussed with the administration. The other thing I would like to, address is this would help the administration totally. I mean, when you have you're talking about cooperation. This is what this is. It's cooperation between legislative and administration. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the clarification of both ends.
Okay. And yeah, I didn't mean to put it all on COVID, but I mean, we know there's been, if you want the nuts and bolts of it, there's been a lot going on at RVT, and it's changed a lot of dynamics within the administration. So I don't think that it is done yet or over yet or has been totally digested by anyone yet. And I see that as something that is a continuing issue. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I just think there's still more to the picture. I think it, and I'm not saying it's going to make anything fail or anything like that. Mr. Yoder.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like I had said earlier, this is the start, this is the start of what should be and should have been since the 1970s when we became a third-class optional city, a consistent review of how we're providing service to the city, what that structure looks like, how the checks and balances of city government work. And to your point, with a lot of the changes at RVT, Randy, they present a great example of why checks and balances in city government are very prudent and very much needed. And this provides that. And I would kindly remind everybody on council that it's there is a long storied record of things falling through the cracks that are visited. They don't go through, but they're important and they don't get brought back up. They fall to the wayside. It's been happening since the 70s on various legislative projects. I'll even reference the Ethics Commission from last year that council had passed. We passed the Ethics Commission, which was extremely important for a number of the reasons that we're discussing here, and yet it sits unfilled. And that's on everybody here. That's on me. That's on the administration. That's on everybody here. At some point we've got to start somewhere, and that's exactly what this is. This is a starting point. This sets us up to have more collaboration with the administration to ensure that they have what they need, that it makes sense, that proper checks and balances are in place. We've had 3 to 4 weeks of collaboration. We amended this based on some feedback from the administration and from other members of council, which is great. That's how this process is supposed to work.
And I would agree with that entirely. And I didn't mean to imply that hasn't been happening. And I don't mean to imply that that this can't go forward and we can't be successful. I just wanted to make sure that we're not saying we can pass this tonight. Override the veto tonight, but then say we'll revisit it somewhere down the road. I think prudently we may have to revisit it sooner rather than later, and I don't see that as being a negative at all. I think we're in fluid times, and we need to be able to quickly react. And I think that's probably my main concern, is that we just prepare ourselves for that.
Yeah, sure. And, just because this is written that it's an annual process, it doesn't mean that it can't happen more often and in sooner increments. Absolutely. Frankly, this sets a minimum, if you really think about it that way, of when and where we do a review together of all of our departments and how we're functioning and what might be missing and what we could be doing better. So again, I think this is a great starting point. This closes a lot of loopholes that have been open way too long. I think this is a very good thing. And to Mayor Slaughter's point, I would actually thank him for addressing the fiscal concerns. I agree with him, but in my opinion, there really are no other budgetary impacts because of this ordinance. This simply really aligns with what has already been going down and been enacted by the administration, very much so. So this simply aligns our code and aligns the accountability mechanisms of city government with how the administration is currently working to structure his administration. And I think that's a good thing.
I do too. And Mr. Banks wants to say something before we leave that point. I did ask the administration to do a financial look at what this ordinance passed and give us an assessment from the finance department's point of view and the administrative point of view just to make sure we're close on the same page with the financial assessments that we have now on what we're passing, and to see, and it never hurts to have another look at something from a different viewpoint, which is the executive branch that is going to be most affected by this. So I just think that's a prudent thing to do there as well. Mr. Banks?
Yeah, in pursuit of finding some common ground on this, is there a procedural move we can make to try to get to a place where we have a financial analysis before we override a veto? I don't want to kick the can down the road on this, but just in pursuit of making the most financially prudent decision, because we really haven't heard from the administration as to the specifics, and that may be because we don't have that analysis yet. So is there some sort of procedural move we could take tonight that might help us along with finding some common ground?
Mr. Lubin, can you give Mr. Banks some guidance on that?
Before you go there, Randy, who did that? Did Joe Pavlock do the financials?
No, Adam did.
Adam who?
Adam Yoder sent us all a financial.
Right, but you said you went and you did it.
No, I said I requested that the administration.
And did you get anything from the administration?
Well, before we voted on our last second reading, I asked the mayor if they could give us their assessment of it. So they're working it out. So we'll have it.
Well, I think Adam went through all of that. Didn't you, Adam?
Well, he didn't get the administration side.
Sure, I did.
I mean, you understand what I'm saying, Bonnie? They may look at things differently or have a different goal in mind that they haven't acted on yet, and would be able to assess dollars and cents in a little different way.
Yeah, but we're the ones who are in charge of the finances.
Absolutely, but I think you make the best decision when you have the most information to make it on. Mr. Yoder?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, here's a kind of a question that kind of stems from before this was even on the agenda. I mean, it seems that the item in question is the Director of Finance and Administration. The Director of Finance was a position that's been unfilled for a number of years. Well, shouldn't say unfilled, unbudgeted for a number of years.
Right.
I know that it's been posted since the end of July. With it being unbudgeted, I'm thinking that the administration probably did some kind of a financial analysis before posting that. What was uncovered potentially in that? That would, I think, help kind of steer this conversation. Mayor Slaughter, I don't know if Joe Pavlock's there either.
Joe's here somewhere. I don't know if they have that information with them. I didn't request anything.
Joe's working on all of that information. And as far as the other positions, public safety would be another one. Chief Hagan's working right now as public safety director. But say tomorrow, Chief Hagan says, I just want to be chief. That's another area where it's not budgeted, that we would potentially need a spot. Same with the emergency management with Chief Killian. He's in that position right now. That's another area where possibly, someone might say we want some money. So there are some areas where, Joe Pavlock and I know Joellen Chappelle from HR, our HR director, is working on as well, developing that financial analysis, as we look at this complete ordinance.
So, yeah, I would,
If can I interject here? Well,
sure. Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
I think perhaps that the discussion that we're having is a little bit circular. The model that we are currently using for city government bears no resemblance to the model that is outlined in the administrative code. We've
Correct.
established that. This brings it much more into concurrence with what's outlined in the administrative code. It may be that when the administration has time to run the financials on what this ordinance requires, they would come back to us and propose some amendments to the ordinance predicated on the financial impacts of this ordinance. And it seems to me like that would be the appropriate next step. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know, unless Norm has some middle ground procedural option like Dave was suggesting. I think that I would rather see this ordinance go into effect so that our governmental structure more closely mirrors that we're committed to on paper. And then if the administration finds that the financial burden is too great under the current circumstances for them to completely act on the ordinance as written, they can come to council and ask for a revision.
I agree with that.
That would be my suggestion as the path forward, pending some middle ground option. Does that sound reasonable?
I think, I agree 100%. I think that's exactly the process that I envisioned.
That exactly. I think that's exactly what you were saying, Randy, and I just said it again.
No,
for you.
I went a long way around. You're right. Maybe it was too circular. But I just wanted to.
Yeah, but I think that makes sense. I think the issue is we do need some back and forth, but I for one am disinclined to delay on at least taking the first step in this process because we don't have it perfectly in place. We know that we'll have to revise this ordinance. We know that we should be revising it, if not annually, at least every 5 to 10 years. And the last major revision to it, I believe, was under Mary Wolf. So better than 12 years ago. So that said, I think we should move with this, and if and when it becomes incumbent upon us to change it again, we should just be ready to do that as quickly as possible. Thanks, Randy. That's my 2 cents. And Adam, I'm sorry, I walked right over you there.
No, that's okay. You were getting to what I was going to get to as well, so that's fine.
Mr. Pelisi?
Thank you, Mr. Allison. So I've been just sitting back, kind of listening and absorbing everybody's comments and concerns on both sides. Councilwoman Mealy, I'm really glad that you spoke up and just said what you did, because I agree with you 100%. I was going to speak up earlier, but I figured I would just let everybody get out their thoughts, what they had on their mind. I completely agree with Adam and Bonnie where this is going, that, this is the direction that we need to go. And again, Liz put it together much better than I think I ever could with her recommendation. I just want to say I completely agree. We do need to get this moving. We need to get this more in line with where we should be. And as Liz stated, if there's changes that need to be made, we can certainly come back and make those revisions, but we need to get moving forward. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Pelisi. I'm going to ask
Randy, can I say something?
Yes, sure.
I do have to agree, Liz. We all realize that we've gone through, ordinances, resolutions, whatever, and we've always had to come back when we found that things needed to be changed, updated, when we found that there were things that didn't work. And and I think that's, I think we all understand that. And I think something like this, we realize that we're going to find things that are not, functioning correctly. And, this gives us a start. And Liz, thank you for saying what you said, because this is vitally important. But we realize there could be a lot of changes, but let's start somewheres.
I'm gonna ask for a motion.
I move.
Second.
Motion.
I think we already had that though, Randy. But
Did we have, I don't, or did we?
Yes, we had one.
yeah, I thought so.
All right. Oh, I did have it checked off. My bad. Okay. So we've had a lengthy discussion. I think, Ms. Mealy, Mr. Yoder,
Go ahead.
pardon me?
No, go ahead.
Oh. So I'm going to call for the vote.
All right. Hey, Randy,
Yes,
just to clarify, so a yes vote overrides the veto, a no vote maintains the veto, correct?
yes. Mr. Lubin?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mrs. Frank?
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 4. That's a second reading, excuse me, of an ordinance creating an accessibility advisory commission. Would you read that in short form, Mrs. Frank, please?
An ordinance creating an accessibility advisory commission of the city of Williamsport and authorizing said accessibility advisory commission to develop a recommended plan for the city of Williamsport's accessibility compliance efforts and outreach. This final reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion from council tonight? Any further comments, Mr. Mackey?
I mean, I've spoke to Councilman Yoder, and Councilman, I don't know if you want to address the things that we spoke about in terms of just clarifying on the private and city aspects of this. And I would also just like to ask maybe Mr. Lubin, would it be necessary to put in this ordinance that the commission shall not only maintain audio records of their meetings, but also be responsible for their minutes?
Actually, I think it's covered by the Sunshine Law that they have an obligation to provide or have minutes. I think in the past, it's really been Mrs. Frank is the one who's been handling the minutes for the various city boards and commissions. So if she's the one that's taking it and keeping the audio portion, at least that way we have the record maintained anyway.
I would just propose that Mrs. Frank is extremely busy as it is. So
I understand that.
I would second that.
and then I will let Councilman Yoder speak to the.
Yeah, so going back through this between readings, the only thing that kind of stuck out to me that I wanted to throw out to the group was, do we want to clarify or hone in on the term citywide? I know that this is a commission geared towards accessibility issues related to city government, and it's pretty clear that we want this to be available for the private sector as a resource. But I don't believe we should be, I don't think it's the intent, at least it wasn't my intent, to have this be a resource or be looking at things non-city government proactively. And I'm just not sure if that term citywide leaves it a bit too open. I don't know if we want to change that to the city of Williamsport. So I'm just kind of curious what everybody's thoughts were.
Or just specifically city government related, is what it's saying. Mr. Banks?
Well, the way I look at it is, I mean, this commission wouldn't have teeth in any respect to anything private, but could they not take on initiatives to try to improve, like the sidewalk issue, for example. Sidewalks are privately owned. We have a lot of sidewalks that are not passable. If they wanted to propose some sort of, or apply for some sort of grant, should they not have leeway to do that to help out with private individuals making their sidewalks more accessible? Something like that. Would we want to take the step to limit their ability to do that, even if they don't have the authority to do it? Is that clear?
I just like that though, but if there's a problem with the sidewalk on somebody's property, it doesn't meet code, that if someone were to complain or if we were to come across it, we would have to require the owner to fix those sidewalks. So there is something in place in the ordinance already for that.
Right. That was just an example. If there's something beyond what goes on in the city in the city government that this commission would want to take on in terms of the projects, things that we would like to improve that are not necessarily underneath the umbrella of the city government. They wouldn't have power in that respect, but it might be nice for them to have the leeway to help out in those respects. Because hopefully, we start to come into compliance across the board in the city, and it'd be nice for the commission to have the ability to take on new projects.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Something to consider there. Any other comments?
Sorry, Randy. Again, I'm just reading in section 2A. It says, it reads exactly, assist in evaluating the accessibility of the city of Williamsport's facilities, programs, activities, and services citywide. I think that's pretty clear that it's just the city of Williamsport in that passage. And again, I do think that this commission could be, an asset to the private sector in terms of education and advising consent on how to move forward with any type of project or activity. So,
Randy, if I might, so just to be, is that okay? So just to be clear, John, the intent is that they serve basically as an asset for city government currently, not so much the private sector, or?
no, I think both, but I think initially their time,
That was,
initially their time will be spent addressing, city of Williamsport facilities, programs, and activities. But as time goes on and those issues are handled, I see this being a great asset to the entire city, both, city government and private business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
that was my hope, is that I think a commission like this, frankly, I think it would be helpful if a commission like this reviewed perhaps large land developments and things like that for the city as well, just in case we could spot things that aren't necessarily completely points that would be covered by the ADA, but that might help a business owner make a project more accessible. Thanks, John.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I had caught in going through this before second reading. So aside from that, I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yoder. Anyone else on council tonight? Hearing and seeing nothing. Mrs. Frank, on the motion for second reading.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mueller,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. And let's move to item 5, an ordinance approving editing and inclusion of certain ordinances. Would you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
An ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinance as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Williamsport, Pennsylvania in first reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Lubin.
Good
Good evening, members of council. This is an annual ordinance. Usually it's done in the springtime, but I guess with the way things have been pushed back, purpose of this ordinance is to codify the ordinances adopted in 2019. And what it does is it sets forth where in the codified ordinance book the sections appear. Where you see it blank, generally community development, block grant ordinances, and budgetary ordinances are not included within the codified ordinances. But everywhere else, it just relates to where it was placed in the ordinance book, or will be placed in the ordinance book when a new edition comes out. And I don't think this has been to any other city council committee.
No, we don't normally review it in committee. And it's really a matter of housekeeping.
Yes.
And keeps us current. Are there any questions from the council people tonight? Mr. Pelizzi.
So I just had a question. So just to explain it a little bit further, just because it's named on this list doesn't mean that it particularly passed or failed. It was just presented. Is that correct?
No, these are ones that were adopted by city council.
Yes, we already voted.
That's why they have ordinance numbers.
Question.
Yeah.
Page 3, number 6378, October 24th, 2019, ordinance renaming College Place to Warrior Way. I thought that failed.
But I thought it passed, and when I drove past there yesterday, they had a sign there calling it Warrior Way. That's why.
Could I break in?
Absolutely.
Vince, the changing of the name of College Place to Warrior Way definitely passed last year. I don't entirely remember how the whole, what all the fallout was around the whole changing. It seemed to me we did not rename a stretch of Franklin Street to College Place. But there was a proposal to perhaps do that within the college zone property. Anyway, all of that got turned into a bit of a quagmire, but the name change from College Place to Warrior Way was definitely approved.
Oh, no, you're absolutely correct, Ms. Mealy. Thank you. I jump-started my memory. I do remember.
Yeah, well, I know it was a whole hot mess. I remember, and I can see not remembering exactly what the end result was, but that part was approved.
Nope, I remember. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of a compromise because they wanted to change the name to Basin Street, and that became an issue, and we talked it through. Any other questions? If not, Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please, on first reading.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Mr. Pelizzi?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Alice?
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 6, which is a resolution agreement with McCarty and Company. In short form, please, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution agreement with McCarty and Company, PC, certified public accountants.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Thank you. And Mr. Grimes, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. This resolution is an agreement with McCarthy and Company for auditing services for business privilege and mercantile tax. This is something that we've always planned to move forward with. We think we can and need to do it now. One, because we wanted to see a little bit how our budget would play out in our first year of collecting the business privilege and mercantile taxes. We've been very successful. We're under budget on our equipment, on our legal services, on our staffing. So we can move forward now with this. But as we get into some of our delinquent collections, into some of our more complex taxpayers, we feel that we need to move forward. Good auditing services always pay for themselves. We collect more than we'll use in them. We have used auditing services in the past, but mainly for discovery of new taxpayers. This is really for current taxpayers or issues that we have within the tax office, or specific reasons why a company may be out of compliance. McCarthy and Company, they're one of the best with this services. I've known them and their auditors since my very first professional organization that I joined for business privilege taxes. They're regularly at the meetings. They come highly recommended from the tax collectors who use them. The closest one is the Keystone Central School District. They do all the business privilege and mercantile collections for Clinton County. And they use Gary Williams, who would be our auditor as well from McCarthy and Company, to do their auditing. This did go in front of Finance and was also reviewed by Austin White.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Ms. Neely, Finance.
Sorry, Randy, this was reviewed by the Finance Committee and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. There's not a whole lot to observe here. As Nick pointed out in the memo that we received, the finances of this are basically, we had assumed that it would take us several years to recoup our initial investment and to get to a kind of a break-even point with not laying out any more funding than what we were paying Berkheimer to handle these taxes for us. But that's happened far more quickly than anticipated, thanks probably in large part to the intense amount of legwork that Nick did. And so these costs, the costs for these two agreements will be offset by the savings that we are realizing from doing our own tax collection in-house on business privilege and mercantile. And consequently, we can move forward with them this year. The financial impact of both of these is relatively minor, but I think the more important thing to note is that we will still be taking in more than we would have if we were outsourcing this collection work to Berkheimer. The only thing that we did in finance, and this I think was Ms. Katz's suggestion, was insert the costs for each of these agreements into the resolution. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I think that we should make it as easy as possible for members of the public to understand the financial impact and understand the costs associated with city government. So putting it in the resolution, not leaving it just buried in the associated contract, I think makes things a little easier. Not to mention for us lazy council people like me, it helps to have it there up front too. So that, as I said, was forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Comments from other members of the Finance Committee or anybody? Mr. Palizzi.
Thank you. Mr. Grimes, typically in the past, how long do these audits generally take?
It depends on the business. Some of them are as quick as sending out a letter and we'll get payment, within 30 days or so. Every business has the right to have an audit scheduled, and they have every right to push that schedule off to a time that fits their need. And then they also have time to appeal any findings or any like jeopardy audits or anything that the city would bring forward. So we've had ones in the past that have gone through the appeals process and have taken up to a year or more to complete. But generally with businesses that are out of compliance, it takes a few months, and some things are complex, like a manufacturer, for example. It's not a very long process, but it is complex, and we may need an auditor to walk through a manufacturing facility to decide exactly what products are being manufactured from raw material into a new product, and what parts of their services, like research and development, or just sort of changing specific products but keeping them in the same format, may be taxable and not exempt under the manufacturing exemption. And that may, produce results immediately moving forward in filing. So it varies depending on the business.
Okay. I guess I was just trying to get an idea of, in the past, how long these have taken. When I had read through this initially, I'd seen where the contract price was that the contractor receives an hourly rate of $190 an hour plus travel plus all postage costs. So I was just trying to get an idea of generally how long something like this might take. What kind of overall cost is that going to have to the taxpayers?
Yeah, we'll have some results immediately, and not immediately, but within 30 to 60 days. I already have a list compiled of a few audits that we want to start, and they're sort of, if you will, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit because we're not trying to take money from anybody, but the easier audits where it's just a very complex filing, I need the auditor to look at it and say, yes, this is correct, or no, it's not correct. If the auditor with his expertise signs off on a finding or an audit that says, no, this is not correct, you exempted A, B, and C as pass-through income, but B and C actually go to a separate entity that needs to file its own business privilege tax. Likely that company's accountant will look at it, say, yes, the auditor's correct, and they'll file an amended return immediately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes. That's all the questions I have.
Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 7. In short form, please, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution agreement with York Adams Tax Bureau.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and second. And I'll just say that this, as well as the next two, were reviewed in finance. So, Ms. Mealy, I'm not going to call on you. You just step up after the presenter's done. Mr. Grimes.
Thank you again. This resolution is with the York Adams Tax Bureau. This is an agreement that would allow local service taxes to be paid online. It's been a belief of mine, I think I said it in my council interview before I took my position, that we receive more tax money when every touch point is easier for a taxpayer to be in compliance and to pay us. And this is a step in that direction. It's something, again, we planned on for a while, and our finances and our collections have allowed it to happen now. This agreement is for $7,500 annually, plus some maintenance costs. Those maintenance costs for municipalities our size or collectors our size have been around $50 a quarter, even a little less. So that's pretty negligible compared to the contract. The reason why this is with the York Adams Tax Bureau, it's a little different arrangement, but the software that we use for our tax collection was developed by the York Adams Tax Bureau. They actually have 2 members of the software company on staff in their offices, and they continually develop and upgrade the software that we use, which benefits us tremendously. This system is hosted by the York Adams Tax Bureau. Since they developed it, so the agreement needs to be with them, and it works directly with our software, and it's actually the same system that the school district uses for the online filings of earned income tax for the entire county. This helps our efficiency. This results in some cost savings with staff, with paper. It probably won't offset the entire cost of it, but like I said, more compliance, a lot better customer service. It's something that the businesses look for, because not only is it easier for them, they don't have to cut paper checks, and they don't have to send some sensitive information through the mail like they have to now for us to review for the local service tax filing. As you said, this was reviewed by finance, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes.
Yeah, Brandy, reviewed by finance and forwarded with a positive recommendation. The same thing applies here. The anticipated annual cost to the city is in the neighborhood of $7,500. That will be more than recouped by the savings we have realized by bringing this back in house. And thanks to the very well thought out efforts of Mr. Grimes.
Other comments or questions from the council tonight? Just Mr. Grimes, thanks again for your continued efforts to improve the treasurer's office and increase the revenue for the city that is out there, and you've done a wonderful effort all the way around.
Thank you very much.
Hearing no other discussion, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 8. And would you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
Resolution authorizing the execution of a municipal winter traffic services agreement between the Commonwealth Department of Transportation and the City of Williamsport.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Winder, welcome tonight.
Good evening, members of council. This is an annual agreement. It is our 4th year of a 5-year agreement with PennDOT for the winter maintenance agreement. The purpose of this winter maintenance agreement is that there's multiple routes through the city of Williamsport that are PennDOT routes. We covered these multiple roads for quite a few years with no reimbursement to the city. This agreement with this year would give us $10,126.08 in reimbursement for the 2020-2021 winter season. The routes that we would cover would be the intersection of 4th Street and Campbell Street, heading south on Campbell to 3rd Street, heading east on 3rd Street to the east city line. Hepburn Street between 4th Street and Via Bella. Ridge Avenue and Newberry from 4th Street heading north to Grimesville Road, and the entire stretch of Via Bella and the short stretch of Basin Street from Via Bella to West or East 4th Street. This was reviewed by finance and passed on with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Winder.
Yes, Randy, Mr. Winder is not lying. We did forward this with a positive recommendation. It is hard to picture how we might have done anything otherwise, given that it's a reimbursement to the city for work that we would have to perform one way or the other. The only interesting part of our discussion, I guess, was a follow-up question that I asked Adam Winder related to our relationship with PennDOT, the streets that PennDOT owns within the city, and to what extent PennDOT's control of those streets is useful to us, and to what extent it's onerous. Mr. Winder made some very good observations. I think that this is something that we should continue to discuss as a municipality. PennDOT, on those streets that are PennDOT roads, PennDOT maintains the blacktop basically on the street, but doesn't deal with any of the items underneath of it, and dictates a lot about what happens on that street from the city perspective. I think everything from speed limit, road closure, lighting requirements, et cetera, et cetera. But as I said, the item itself is not at all controversial, and it came from finance with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Mrs. Katz.
Yes, I think we should really thank Adam Winder for what he's done with this, because before we were not getting any money for doing this work. And Adam went and he researched this, and he's the one who started bringing the money into the city with this. So I think we all owe him a grateful thanks.
Great point, Mrs. Katz. I think we all second that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none then, Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy. Liz,
Sorry, Janice. Yep. Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 9, Mrs. Frank, would you read that in short form, please?
Resolution authorizing the city of Williamsport to award a contract for the purchase of 2 compressed natural gas BRT plus low floor transit buses.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Winder?
Tonight I have Chris Clark, who is our fleet manager, with me. I am going to allow him to present this resolution to council as part of our goal to familiarize council as well as the employees at RVT with each other, and help give council background of what the individual employee does. Like I said, he's our fleet manager, so one of his roles is to make sure that when we order any type of equipment, a bus, for example, that we equip that with the proper and best equipment we can in regards to ADA compliance, camera systems for safety, all things of that nature. So I'll turn it over to Chris Clark.
Thank you. Good evening, President Allison, council members and administration. The resolution before you was forwarded with a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee for tonight's meeting. As stated, the resolution is to purchase 2 30-foot compressed natural gas low floor buses and was previously approved in a fiscal year 1920 CCA. The amount is $635,065 each, which is fully state funded. These buses will not replace recent buses, but will replace previous end life 30-foot buses that were not replaced with the same size during the 2014 through 2016 when we removed those vehicles from service. The ability for us to have this smaller length will allow connector and access service to enter and exit smaller or congested areas throughout the city and surrounding communities with daily bus service. RVT had 4 previous 30-foot buses that were used daily for this type of service, and we would like to get back to that capacity.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Are there any, finance?
Well, finance doesn't have all that much to add to this discussion, but we did forward this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. I think that most of our discussion, unless other members of finance want to remind me of something else, most of our discussion revolved around the nature of the funding, the federal versus state funding involved in this. Excuse me, guys. And then also the natural gas vehicles. And I specifically was interested to know whether natural gas was a savings to the city, not only with the state rebates that are in place currently, but if those rebates were to go away, if we would still be saving money, and if the vehicles were had as long a life with natural gas as with diesel. And the answer to both of those was yes. That is to say that the natural gas conversion has generally been a wise move for us, regardless of state incentives, and that we're having a good experience with these buses in terms of maintenance. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Mrs. Katz. Bonnie?
Lord, I'm telling you, okay.
Hello.
These are 2 30-foot buses, and I didn't think of asking this at the meeting. We do have smaller buses, don't we, that we've gotten?
We have 2 smaller Ford Transit vans that are 21 foot each, but these would be the smallest we would have in the fleet for a heavy duty bus.
Okay, so you go from the vans to the 30-foot, and then is there
now?
Pardon me?
From the vans to the 35 and 40 foot now.
Okay, that's what I thought that was bigger, because I remember statements being made that some of the buses were too big to go around around Basin Street in that area.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So the 30-foot is the smaller at this point. Okay. Thank you very much. I just, that was just, it just hit me tonight.
Great question. Thank you.
Yes, good question, Mrs. Katz. Other comments from the council tonight on this? Adam, thank you for bringing Chris tonight. It's nice to see the faces of the people that do a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scene. Chris, if I could ask you, how long have you been fleet manager?
I've been the fleet manager here for 5.5 years.
So you've seen a lot of and overseen a lot of the turnover we've had with the natural gas buses and the conversion of the fleet. So
yes,
I just like, and I think all council would like to thank you for all the effort and time and expertise you've put into this whole transition. It wasn't. It was a rather massive undertaking, and it's been very well done. And it's nice to see your face and to know who you are.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Quite welcome. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder. Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank.
Andy,
Yes.
Adam was muted, but I saw his mouth saying yes, so
Okay.
should I record that?
You want to say yes?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Let's move to item 15. Except for filing Water Authority ad hoc committee meetings of May 13th, 2020, the controller's report February and March of 2020, and the codes report for July of 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
In a second? Anyone?
Second.
There is a second. Any corrections or questions tonight from council? Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Just one here.
Thanks.
The public safety report was also included in our packet, so I just want to make sure that's on the record that we are approving that, or unless we aren't approving that, but it is included in that PDF.
I did see it in the PDF, but can we include that?
Yeah, I can change the minutes to reflect that. If you
Okay.
will just add it.
We will include the public safety minutes. Or public safety report, rather, it was.
Good eye, Dave.
And Mr. Banks, do you have the month for that?
Me?
Or Mrs. Frank?
No, I don't have the month in front of me. I think it was,
It's April to June.
Okay,
thanks, Dave.
April to June 2020.
Oh,
Do we need to amend to add that, Mr. Lubin?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to amend the except for filing motion of minutes and reports to include the public safety report, April, May, and June 2020.
and
So
and
moved.
it's also actually, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's also January through March. There's two.
January through March of
So
20.
it's two reports, January through March, and
Okay,
then April to June. I apologize for interrupting.
so okay, let's vote on the first amendment. And then we'll amend January through March since that's a separate report.
Got a motion in a second. We can just redo it and do it all as one, right?
Mr. Lubin?
Did they vote?
Did you vote on the original?
No.
Then you can do it as one.
Okay, we have 5 reports now. Water Authority ad hoc 5/13/2020. Controllers report February and March 2020. Codes report July 2020. Public safety report January through March 2020. And public safety report April through June 2020. Is there a motion on a second on that?
So move.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any more, Mr. Banks? He said no, we're good to
No,
go.
that's it. That's it.
Okay. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 16, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be Thursday, September 24th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. remote. Upcoming meetings, Friday, September 11th, 11 a.m. ERC. Do we have anything scheduled, Ms. Mealy?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Allison, although is Mr. Nar still on this meeting?
I don't see him.
We're
Because housing,
supposed to have that habitat.
okay.
That would be housing needs, I think.
That would be housing needs. That wouldn't be ERC, but was just putting that out there. I've not heard anything about ERC, but often, once again, that would come from Mr. Nar. I'll try to get something jump started on that committee, Randy, because it seems as though it's sort of fallen by the wayside.
That's fine. I'll call Gary. 11 a.m. ERC, 12 p.m. housing needs. Maybe. Tuesday, September 15th, 10 a.m. blighted property, 6:30 p.m. Harb. Thursday, September 17th, 10:30 a.m. zoning hearing board, 4 p.m. Board of Health. Tuesday, September 22nd, 11:30 a.m. public safety, 1 p.m. finance, 2:30 p.m. public works meeting. Wednesday, September 23rd, 11:30 a.m. redevelopment rather. And then we have our council meeting. Are there any comments from council tonight? Mr. Mackey.
Yeah, thank you, President Allison. Just again, for anyone watching at home, if you are interested in serving on the Accessibility Commission, you just want to submit a letter of interest to Janice Frank, the city clerk. And again, there'll be two positions appointed by the mayor and 3 by city council. And we look to get this commission up and running as soon as possible. So I've already had a few people reach out to me, which is pretty exciting. So that's just what you want to do if you're interested in joining the commission.
John, do you want to give my email?
Could you give it? I don't have it in front of me.
It's one word, cityclerk@cityofwilliamsport.org.
Thank you.
Mr. Banks.
Just to piggyback on that, if they could include a resume in there, just so we have an idea with the letter of interest. I don't think it's required, but it's nice to have it.
Mr. Pelisi.
Just as a side note, between now and our next meeting, I'll be hitting up the rest of council to take up a collection and get Councilman Yoder a microphone for his computer.
I'll chip in.
Thanks.
We should, now we have to have a budget first. Okay,
Hey, Randy.
yes.
If I might interject, and if this isn't appropriate, please excuse me, but I've noticed I was unaware when we were planning out our council meetings for the, excuse me, Daisy, for the coming year. that, that there was that we were going to have a excuse me, sorry, I'm momentarily responsible for Daisy here.
You're being filibustered.
Um, yeah, she's filibustering. That we had a 3-week gap between council meetings, which means that ERC and housing needs now are falling in the same week as all the rest of our committee meetings.
Yes, they are.
Not the way that we'd originally intended. If I might briefly ask the other members of those committees if they would be okay, perhaps we should go ahead and move the meetings back to the opposite week of council meetings. And Ms. Frank could take care of that for us moving forward. Would that be okay for everyone else who serves on those committees to take it back to the arrangement we've had for the remainder of the year?
ERC and housing.
Housing needs.
Yeah, actually, the day after the council meeting does work better for my schedule, and I believe we've advertised it this way.
We have advertised it this way.
Yeah.
That's precisely what I was getting at. This is the committed day. If it works better for everyone else, it really doesn't make a huge difference to me. But this was not the way that we'd originally arranged them. So
At least for, yeah, thanks, Vince. Can you hear me okay? At least I can make either work. So whatever's convenient for you two related to ERC is fine by me.
okay. And I think Mr. Mackey, you're the other member of Housing Needs. John?
I'm good in either direction. Just let me
Okay.
know.
So Dave, you say tomorrow works better, the Friday after council meetings works better for you anyway?
Yes.
Okay, then let's let it go. All right, sounds good. Sorry, as long as I had an opportunity to ask that and to get that and get it out to the public, if we were changing it, I wanted to do that, so.
Right.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Liz, there isn't one tomorrow.
I've not received any materials from Mr. Narn. At this point, I would consider it slightly short notice. So I don't believe that we have any materials for either ERC or housing needs, but I did reach out to Mr. Narn just now to see if he had anything for housing needs that I was unaware of. So I'll let you know if I hear from him that the meeting is on. Janice, I think I would consider ERC to be canceled.
I had reached out to him via email a little bit ago, Liz, about the habitat issue. So, but haven't heard anything either.
Yeah, exactly. So I like I said, I texted him just now as well.
Okay.
But I think we can probably consider that postponed for another 2 weeks. That would be my preference. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Anything else in council tonight? Anything from the administration tonight? Seeing none. Mr. Lubin, then, did we have any comments from the public?
Yes, we received 4 of them. In fact, one of them just now. And all 4 are from 24 East 3rd Street, Williamsport. And the first one is from Jody Bainey, and it's addressed to President, Council. Really a resume for a disability committee? If that isn't discrimination, I'm not sure what is. Second one is from Karen Koch, President of Council. The lack of effort on behalf of Mayor Slaughter and City Council to prioritize access for all members of the community raises this question. How will council and the mayor assure that non-discriminatory practices are used in the development of the Disability Advisory Commission? Allowing the mayor to appoint members in addition to a stacked deck comprised of council and administrative staff does not represent the disability community. Let the disability community speak for themselves. City Hall for all. Next one is also from Jody Bainey, President, Council. When I say City Hall for all, that is a statement that I truly hope you will follow. How will members of council guarantee they will not continue to discriminate against members of the city who are disabled, who want to be part of the Disability Advisory Commission? What will the application process be, and who will be determining who is disqualified to be part of this commission? Allowing people such as the mayor to make these decisions is not appropriate. Allow members of the community who are disabled to speak for themselves. If you don't have a disability, you cannot speak for that community. City Hall for all. President, this is the last one. It's from Misty Dion. President Allison and members of City Council. As a member of the Leadership Network and Advisory Board for the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center, I have extensive knowledge and experience with the development and implementation of 504 accessibility plans. In my experience, the most successful plans involve people with disabilities who have lifelong experiences. I'd like to recommend the Williamsport Disability Advisory Commission be comprised by a majority of people with disabilities. In addition, it makes sense that experience and knowledge should qualify a member rather than who the know. If members need to be hand selected by the administration or city council, it certainly appears conflicting given the history and lack of accessibility. How will you assure all members with disabilities have equal access to serve on this commission? And that's the last one that we received.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. I think that brings our regular meeting to a close. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and we will have an executive session.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good evening.